Hi everyone, my name is Hope Friedman and I am the writer of the Go-To Guide for Empowering Our Youth. This is my sixth webinar and it's about communication. First, I want to apologize for any background noises or sounds you might hear around me. I am in my house and it's a bit loud here. So I'm going to try to compete with the AC and the fans and everything so you can hear me. I will try to be as fluid as possible and not try to read off of the script, but it's hard at times, so it might sound a little bit wordy, so just stay with me during those parts. I also want to say that if you have watched my past 5 videos, any of them, then you might want to skip to the information, which is about 20 minutes in or 15 minutes in. I want to mention briefly that this will be lengthy. It's not a overview of the book. It's more or less a book reading. So if you don't want to listen to all of it, I recommend skipping around or reading for yourself on Apple Books. So to start off, I'd like to take a second to introduce myself and share a bit about the purpose of this video. As I mentioned earlier, my name is Hope Friedman. Right now, I'm a high school student juggling school life and various activities, including something very close to my heart, my involvement in Girl Scouts. For those who might not be familiar with Girl Scouts, it's an amazing organization that's somewhat like Boy Scouts, if you've ever heard of them. Girl Scouts focuses on empowering young girls, helping us to develop independence, leadership skills, and confidence. It's more than just earning badges or going on trips. It's about learning to be strong, usually through those badges and trips, but when people think of Girl Scouts, that's usually the first thing that they come to. And it's not all about selling cookies or, doing those kind of things. It's about taking away lifelong lessons that teach us to be strong and capable individuals who support one another. Now, in order to work towards the Gold Award, which is the highest honor a Girl Scout can earn, there's a process that begins with earning the Bronze and Silver Award first. There's many different paths, so I'll go into more detail about how that all works in a little bit later. But for now, the key takeaway is that the Gold Award is a significant achievement and the main inspiration behind the project I am sharing with you today. Beyond Girl Scouts, I want to share a little bit more about who I am and what motivates me. I am very passionate about helping my communities in various ways. I believe in making a positive impact wherever I can and often try to kill 2 birds with 1 stone by combining my interests. For example, I have a website called equalmedicalaccess.org, which is dedicated to advocating for equal medical access in healthcare. This is just another cause I deeply care about, and I'd be thrilled if you took a moment to visit the site and maybe even show some support if it resonates with you. Aside from that, I'm also actively involved in my school community. I enjoy tutoring my peers and participating in honor societies. Volunteering and giving back to those around me is something I find truly rewarding. And of course, last but not least, my Girl Scout community is a core part of my life. It's not only a place where I strive to contribute and make a difference, but it's also a strong support system I can rely on. So it's a little bit about me and why I'm presenting in front of you today. I'm excited to share more about my journey with Girl Scouts and also with my book. And I hope it inspires you in some way and you could take something away from it and maybe even learn a little bit more about me or something you didn't know. So let's get into some technical things. I usually have a photo up in the corner of my book. It's, I forgot it on this slide, but it's pretty Generic. If you search up The Go-To Guide to Empowering Our Youth by Hope Friedman, it should pop up. It's a pretty white cover with a sliver of like sage green on the side. So it's pretty easy to look for. And that's how it will look when you search it up on Apple Books. So it's currently on Apple Books for free, and hopefully in the future it'll show up on some other prominent sites, maybe Barnes & Noble or Overdrive, something like that. For the book, I wrote down some important factors for writing the book and features about it. First, my main goal was always empowering children. But what's special about my book is that it's not directed towards the kids. It's directed towards their parents, but also just educators and people who work with kids. You may also say that there's guides all over the internet. Why would I want to read this one? What makes this one special? And well, yeah, that's true. This was written with children in mind because I am a child. I tried using my experiences to guide the book, which is also why in every chapter I wrote about my thoughts and opinions so that adults can understand from the eyes of a child what it's like to experience these traits and how it feels to learn about it. Next, I want to embrace the emotions. As I wrote in the introduction, this was a direct quote. This book isn't here to force traits onto children. It's here to bring out what's already inside them and let it shine. And that's truly my intentions. All kids have emotions, and I want to show adults how to bring it out of them. The next is also connected because it's not about forcing it, but just like in school, there needs to be a basis of where they start. For example, I was talking to my cousin, and he was telling me how he didn't know the difference between empathy and sympathy. In this case, I'd be teaching him the difference and showing him the correct ways to show it. My next bullet is inclusivity, and the other one's accessibility. These go hand in hand. My book can be used for all types of people, and it's not just for parents. It's for educators, Girl Scout troop leaders, and for people who want to learn more about kids and how they learn, and also just people who work with children in general. I also think Apple Books is extremely accessible for all people, especially because I feel like everyone nowadays owns some sort of Apple device, like a MacBook or a phone, so it's very easy. But because my book is on Apple Books right now for free, and I want it to be as accessible as possible. That's why it's free. That's why it's on a site that a lot of people know about. But I want it to spread more. So as I said, I will be trying to put it on other sites that are commonly visited that you don't need a specific device for, like Barnes & Noble and Overdrive, or even libraries, like public libraries near you. But I will 100% be open to sending PDFs. I have PDFs all over, and if you go to my email, which is in the caption, I would be happy to send a copy to you. And it's all about getting the word out, so I'd be happy to share my book with anyone who'd be interested in teaching someone something new. So I also briefly want to say that my book, just like these videos that I'm making, this is my sixth one out of 8, and I always include these introductions. So this About Me page I have made and talked about 5 times already, and I will be talking about it for this time and 2 more. And I do this on purpose. I include an introduction that I repeat and a conclusion that I repeat. And I do it because I want it to be a standalone. If you wanted to listen to each video, webinar 1, webinar 2 in order and listen all the way through, you do you. You can do what you want, and that's what the videos were made for people to watch. But I also geared it towards, I know that not everybody wants to learn about every single thing. They don't want to listen to 8 hours of content straight up. They want to listen to one, maybe a few months later another one, something like that. That's why I made the introduction and conclusions for each video, so that it's very easy to skip around if you do want to learn something else. If you just want to watch one video, then you can watch this. If you just wanted to learn about books that show kindness, then you could just go to kindness and skip right to books. I openly encourage everybody to skip around and find what you're looking for. if you want to learn a little bit about me, I mix it up in each video. It's not copy and paste, even though a lot of things are very similar, because the things aren't going to really change about the book and about me, besides from the chapters. So that's why it's very similar. But I encourage people to skip around and just skip past the first 15 minutes and just go to the content, or skip to just the resources or my personal thoughts and just skip there. And I openly encourage that. And I encourage it in the book too. I want people to skip around. You can read it cover to cover, that's totally fine. But I made it so that you can just go to one chapter and you can read about it. You don't need to read every single chapter to understand it. And I like the way I did that. So that was on purpose, and you can take from it however you want. So just wanted to share that a little bit. In the book, I go through 8 main chapters. Of course, I started and ended with an introduction and conclusion. But as for the traits, I talked about it as follows. So kindness, confidence, empathy and sympathy, leadership, being an upstander, communication, honesty, and gratitude. Personally, my favorite chapters in terms of writing was leadership, because it's always been pretty big for me. But it also similarly goes with being an upstander. So they were both really my favorite. Especially being a Girl Scout, those traits have always been ingrained in me since I was little. And something I always ask myself to be. And also, in order to be a leader, you need to be an upstander. And in order to be an upstander, you need to be a leader. And they go hand in hand, and they were both my favorite to write about, and they're both my favorite to teach about and show in my everyday life. Next, I want to briefly talk about what's discussed in each video I'll be making. These aren't really live, so I don't know if it's still considered a webinar, but that's what I consider it. Alright, so number 1, each day we'll have a new chapter discussed. This is true, except it's not really each day. As I said before, this is my 6th webinar, and it hasn't been filmed in order of days, but instead at different times. That is not the most, that sentence was a little bit confusing, but basically all it means is that I didn't make it as in 5 days ago I started, I made my first video, then the next day I made another video, next day I made another video. It didn't work like that. I did it so I made one maybe a month ago, and maybe I made one 2 months ago, maybe I made one, yesterday. So it's not in order, but it is linear. I do webinar 1, webinar 2, webinar 3, that's the order. I'm not going out of order. And that's what I mean by a new chapter will be discussed each day. So it's not each day, but each video, it'll be in the order. And this one is about each video will focus on a singular chapter of the book, like how today's chapter is 6, communication, and the last video was on being an upstander, which was chapter 5. And so chapter 4, leadership, it just goes on, and the next 2, honesty and gratitude, 6, 7, and 8. So it's in order. I will do an overview and book reading. So I won't be doing a full reading of the chapter, and I did that on purpose. So if you want to read in more detail or see some more examples for certain subcategories, then you can easily access it and read it more on your own time frame. This will be lengthy, so it is around 1 hour per video. And if you just want to watch a certain part of the video, you want to look for good books, I suggest heavily, again, I said it before, but skipping around and looking for exactly what you want. If you don't want to watch the videos to find a certain thing, then go read the book. Go just search it up there and, look at it there. And that's my suggestions. Yeah, but it is kind of a book reading. It will be very long. I take a lot of long quotes from chapters to talk about it, and I did that on purpose because this is, in some way or another, a book reading. I like to start off each video fresh, as in I'm talking to a new group of people that may not know who I am, and that's why I do it. So it's something new each video, and I make it so they don't have to go read the book if they don't want to. But if they would, it's also inspiring them to go read it. So it's kind of a mix of both. And you do with it what you want. You take from it what you want, what you wish. I will be talking about the writing process and my why. Towards the end, I'll go through my little tips and tricks and my process using Apple Books as a first-time writer. I'm not an expert at all, but I like to throw in some of my experience to make it easier for people just like me looking for some help or some advice. So I add that towards the end. Talk about Girl Scouts and my overall journey. Girl Scouts has been a big part of my life and the main reason for writing this book. So I love to talk about it and what it means to me, as well as how I got it to where I am now and the goal process and what leads up to getting to the goal process. I'm not an expert at that either, but because I've been in Girl Scouts for so long, I love to share my story and get it out there. And if it just inspires one or two people that are seeing it, then I've done what I've wanted to. And I'll get into that in more details later. But it's definitely something that when I originally planned of making these webinars, I was like, I have to talk about Girl Scouts. It's one of my main priorities, in addition to people learn about my book. Fun and personal stories throughout. So in order for it to not be super boring, I love to throw in a little bit of flair and spice and share some interesting stories throughout the way. So it's not as boring, but also you get to know me a little bit better and more about my book, of course. So you can look forward to that. And that's something that you'll find differently in the videos versus the book, which I like, and you get to hear from me. You get to hear from the author, I guess, of the book, and you get to know what I was thinking through it. So I like that a lot. It's not just words on a page, it's more of an explanation. So, as I said, today's chapter is communication. So this is taken directly from the book as the first line of the chapter. It says, the definition of communication, a process by which information is exchanged between individuals through a common system of symbols, signs, or behavior. If you go through and read the book, you'll also notice that I wrote other people's definitions from family, friends, and really anyone who wanted to help me during the process. And I think I'll talk about this more later, but it's important to have those community members to rely on and discuss information with. But I'll talk about that later. I included these other people's definitions because I say this in every video and I stress it a lot because a 5-year-old learns a lot different than a 20-year-old or a 50-year-old. They learn very different. And so it's important to know what is the common theme between all these 5-year-olds? Do they all not know that? Do they all think communication is one thing? Do they all not know what it is? And you want to add on from that. So I highly recommend going to the child, whether it's your kid or the kid you babysit or your students, and ask them, what is communication to you? And by doing this, I saw a big common theme. And the theme was almost every person that talked about communication talked about it in a way of just spoken language. And that's not true at all. You can, even when you don't know about it, all these people know other forms of communication. But in the moment when you're writing it down, communication just sounds like it's from one person to another and just speaking out loud. And that's not always true. You can write notes. It's not speaking. You can do sign language. That's communication that doesn't involve using your mouth. Well, doesn't involve you speaking to others. And communication can also be a raise of an eyebrow, small gestures that are not spoken but are commonly known as something. So raising your eyebrows could be surprised, and people can take that as a form of communication because it is. And I saw that a lot of people didn't see that as much. So I think I wrote about that a little bit later, so I'll see if I'll get into more of that later if I did. So next I wrote about what does it mean to have good communication skills and why is it important? I want to make it, I did this on purpose just to clarify for whoever's reading and make it really clear what I'm trying to get across. And just in big font, why is it important? So I'll read it, but again, take it with a grain of salt because everyone is different and it gives different meanings for everyone. But this is what I got from my experience and what I know. And if you do want to teach, I think I said this before, like if you want to teach the children, ask them what they think communication is first, because then you can add on to it. So I stress that too in every video. Ask your child or whoever it is what communication means to them. So it was a little bit too long for the slide, so I'm just going to read it off of my script. But if you want to see it or read it for yourselves, you can go to Apple Books. Communication skills follow a child throughout their entire life. They are essential because they form the foundation for all other skills. To discuss important or sensitive topics, children need to know how to communicate effectively and appropriately. In school, this means understanding the right time and way to respond to others, especially their friends. It also involves being aware of their surroundings, the situation, and the context of the conversation. Communication also looks different at different ages. A 3-year-old communicates with friends and family in a different way than a 16-year-old. It's important to nurture children where they are developmentally, helping them grow at their own pace rather than rushing the process. So next, how do we teach it? In big font too, because it's straightforward. How do we teach it? In every single chapter, I include usually discussion prompts. I'm going to do it differently a little bit every time. So I might have added questions. I think this time it's questions and discussion prompts. I first do it for ages 3 to 6, then 7 to 12, then 13 and older. And all of these are just some ideas. There are, again, some more in the book, but you can feed off of this, add some more to it, take some away, use some from the 7 to 12-year-olds. You know, it's all how you word it, and it can be worded in different ways. So it's not strictly for that age range. It's just what I thought was the best to be teaching them at that age. So for ages 3 to 6, at this age, focus on facial expressions and what they mean in terms of communication. Ask what being sad, happy, or angry looks like. And you can ask, what do you feel when you, what do you do when you feel like that? This teaches them how to communicate how they're feeling, how to correctly identify how they're feeling, how to correctly identify how others are feeling, and communicate with them why they may be feeling this or how they can support them. And that's big, because communication isn't just speaking, it's a variety of things. It's advocating, it's speaking up for yourself, and it's very, very important. And we can see that in a lot of ways. So 3 to 6 is definitely an age to get that started. And even younger, 2 years old, when I was little and when my brother was little, before we could even speak, my parents would do simple sign language, like they would sign the word for milk. I think a lot of families do this, or food, or more, because it's shown that babies and younger children can communicate with these small signs before they can even speak. And we can even see this when they cry. When babies cry right when they're born, from the first year of life, their different cries are a different type of communication. They cry differently when they're hungry to when they want to go to bed. You can tell, and it takes time and learning to hear these, but if you're with a baby, you can hear it. And it's their first form of communication. So 7 to 12-year-olds, practice active listening. Teach eye contact, nodding, and summarizing what others say. Introduce I statements. Teach them to express feelings respectfully. For example, I feel upset when. Give constructive feedback. Coach them on how to give and receive it with kindness and clarity. The I statements are so important. Because to have good communication, you need to be confident. And it's related, but not in the biggest sense. I would say it's very related, though. I said in the confidence chapter, mantras. Mantras are so important. By starting these I feel upset when, or I whatever, just taking control, saying I, and understanding that it's you in control. You are the one communicating. It's not we, even though sometimes it is, but teach them I. And the mantras, like, I feel good about myself. I look pretty. I am smart. Those kind of things, they teach good communication. Confidence first, and then that builds onto communication. So, ages 13 and older, develop emotional intelligence. Discuss how emotions affect communication and relationships. You can ask, can the teen recognize when emotions are influencing their tone and word choice? Encourage reflective listening. Practice paraphrasing and validating others before responding. Another question you can ask is, can they respond with empathy rather than just advice or judgment? Which is very important. Very important. You don't want to go straight to judging. You want to look at the context, look at the situation, then respond. Not just immediate judgment or advice as in trying to fix it, but empathy. Show that you care and that you're there to talk. And then maybe try to get them advice if they're at that point. But it's all about reading the situation, which is a big part of communication. Next, I compiled a few activities to encourage and foster good communication skills. So, first, build your activities around the communications topics and questions above. Always encourage them to speak by asking simple questions or encouraging them to speak up. It sounds silly, but it's important. Just speaking is very important. It's the foundation of good communication. It's not the only way of communication, but it's the foundation. So, encourage them to speak up for themselves. Encourage them to order their own food at a restaurant. Even simple things like that teach good communication, and it helps them not rely on others that much. So, playing games like Two Lies and a Truth. That was totally wrong. Sorry. Two Truths and a Lie. Telephone can also be fun with children already. Lots of children already can also be fun, and lots of children already know how to play. And as a kid, I used to love those traditional drama and acting games like Splat and making skits. So I just want to go over what each one is, just in case you're not 100% sure, because I'm not sure if I knew. I know now, obviously, but I'm just going to go over each one. So, Two Truths and a Lie is a fun activity, and it's commonly used as an icebreaker. I've done it in school. I've done it at summer camp, just to get the ball rolling, get people to start to learn each other's names, get to know each other, and it's a fun activity, and it can be, it's fun to learn about other people. So, Two Truths and a Lie, sounds like what it is. You think of two truths and one lie. And usually the truths are something that could be a lie. Like, it's very hard to tell. And sometimes a lie could be a truth. And it's usually not like my favorite color is pink, but it's actually purple. It's usually, you could definitely do that. But it's more like, I visited the Grand Canyon. That would be the lie or something. So wait, I'll go over a quick example. So, I've been to 5 concerts. I have 2 brothers. And I am a Girl Scout. I think you know which one is the truth. At least the last one is definitely truth. But I have been to 5 concerts. So my last lie would be that I have 2 siblings, because I only have 1 brother. So that would be the lie, and everyone would go in the circle and guess the lie. And it's definitely a conversation starter, I will say. Next is telephone. This one's a fun game. It's not too much of communication skills, but it is really fun to do. So the first one's telephone. Someone is the leader, not the leader, but they're the first one in the group, the first one in the row, and they think of a random word. It could be literally anything. So, lemonade. Then they would turn to the person next to them and whisper in their ear, lemonade. And then it would keep going until the end, and the last person in line would say, lemonade, and you would see if it made it all the way to the end. Then, me and my friends would play a game called Broken Telephone, which, in our opinion, was a lot funnier. It is a fun game. So, let's say lemonade. So, lemonade, what you would tell, whatever that person heard, they would tell the next person. So, I can't even think of an example, but this is a weird example, but if the first person said flower, and then the second person heard Florida or something, they could tell the third person something, and it would just keep going. So that was a weird example, but it just keeps going, and sometimes it's just gibberish. So you just keep going. So that's a fun game, definitely. Next is Splat, which is very hard to explain in my opinion, but it's basically you guys are in a standing circle. One person starts it and points at another and says splat. If that person has to duck. So one person across the circle says splat, that person has to duck, and the two people standing next to them have to point fingers at each other. Whoever does it last is out, but if the person doesn't duck, then they're out. So it's a big thing. Like, it's a little bit confusing, but if you search up a video, it might be a little bit easier to understand because it's a little bit confusing. Next is public speaking, which is a basic, it's not really an activity. It's more just something to get them in the ritual of speaking. I know for me and my school, I know a lot of teenagers have trouble speaking in front of others, including me. Public speaking is I'm not going to say issue, but it's definitely harder. And it's not, it does really depend on personality and some stuff like that, because if you are more shy, then it's harder to speak in front of other people. But it's not always the case, not always. And it's important to practice. So even if you practice part of doing it in front of your stuffed animals, that's public speaking. Even if it's not as much pressure, it's still public speaking. Speaking in front of your school, public speaking. Try to find these opportunities where you can public speak. Maybe even just talking in front of your friends and family. So those are definitely good activities. And I also included making skits, which is just fun. Just fun. Okay. Next, I have some books that I wrote down. Okay. So first, I have these are some books that I compiled from my community, from me, from the internet, just some stuff I've searched up and I've read before, usually, that teach good communications skills, or whatever the skill is that I'm trying to teach. In this case, communication. So, My Mouth is a Volcano by Julia Cook. I've read this book. It's very good. I Can Listen by David Parker. Words Are Not for Hurting by Elizabeth Verdick. And Dare to Be You by Matthew Syed. So, these are good books to check out. Make sure, of course, it's age appropriate, as in it's not too mature for your child. They might not understand some concepts, so make sure you look online first, look at some reviews, make sure it's in the right age range that your child will understand what the book means. And if they don't, then look up some other books. These are not the only books out there for teaching communication skills. Next, I couldn't find a lot of websites. I only found two that were heavily parenting focused, as you can see by the URLs. The first one was parentingscience.com, and the second was positiveparentingsolutions.com. They both have a lot of great worksheets and blogs, but if you are a teacher or a babysitter or any camp counselor, anything that that wants to teach children communication skills, you can look on here. There might be some good resources. If there's not, consider playing games. Consider just having a group discussion. That's what I can suggest for you. You can look more online. It's very hard to find those kind of things. I just want to go back for a second because I forgot to include something before I read my personal thoughts. When I was in ninth grade, I had my ninth grade English honors class, and whenever we walked in and we saw the desks arranged in circles, we'd all freak because everyone knows what that means. It means Socratic seminar, which we hated. It means speaking, not really interrupting others, but that's how I always thought about it. Speaking up before others and trying to get your ideas in before other people steal it. And it counts as a grade. It's if you don't speak, then you don't get anything. So it's important to teach skills so that your child doesn't feel that way, because but it's inevitable. Honestly, everyone feels that way. Everyone has a little bit fear of public speaking, even if it's just a little bit. So I'd say that's just important because it comes up later in life, which I think I could talk about I talk about this in my personal thoughts. So I'm going to just read my personal thoughts, go through it, and see where we're at with that. Communication is one of those traits that ties everything together. In order to be kind or empathetic, children need to be able to communicate in an effective and mindful way. But to do that, they must have the right techniques and methods. Being able to physically speak is not communication in itself, despite popular belief. Communication can range from sign language to subtle hand gestures, but not all of these are easily identified, especially for young eyes. To tell if someone is angry or happy, you need to be able to study their face and understand which traits are related to happiness and which are related to sadness. This is not a memory game. We use empathy and our own understanding to recognize how others feel. That is why communication is important. It helps us understand who we are. Poor or lacking communication skills do not always mean being silent or unable to talk in front of a crowd or in front of parents. They can also mean not knowing when to speak or what the right words are to comfort or connect with someone in the moment, and that can significantly hinder how a child grows up. I was an outgoing child myself, but I did not fully understand the power of my words, just like many children, or how they affected others. I would speak out without understanding why others were upset. Of course, with the help of my parents and educators, I was able to see and understand the right and wrong times to talk about certain topics. Now it has helped me a lot and has given me the ability to understand when my friends are upset and what to bring up around them during that time. And I think that skill is so important to introduce to children or young adults. So those were my personal thoughts. So let's talk about writing. People often ask me how long the process is. First, I'm going to say how long. There's multiple how long, so I'm just going to go through all of them. People often ask me how long the process of creating my book really took. The truth is, it wasn't something I sat down and completed overnight. It's not just month. It's not just something you complete in 1 month. Writing itself took me about a year and a half. I had to brainstorm, outline, write, and rewrite, and fix grammar until it felt like something that I'd be able to present because it was presentable. Each step took a lot of time, energy, and sometimes I would go back and rework chapters that I thought were done. So that's the beauty of it was just a lot of writing, and it took about a year and a half. So the writing was only one part of it, though. Once I finished the draft, the publishing process added more time. I used Apple Pages to write and format the book. Pages gave me tools to design the layout and make sure the text looked polished and professional. It was very helpful throughout the process. Then I published it through Apple Books, which gave me a way to share it with the public. This step wasn't instant either. I had to double check formatting, submit files, wait for approval, and make adjustments, which took about 72 hours. All of that took about a week and a half, but it was definitely worth it because it got approved by all the sites. And when I finally saw my book appear on Apple Books, it was super rewarding, and it was definitely, because it was such a long process, it made me feel like it was all worth it in some sense. So yeah, that took me about a week and a half. As for length, the book is designed to be approachable. It's something that you don't have to read cover to cover in one sitting. Instead, I want it to be the kind of book you jump in and out of, choosing the sections that matter the most to you. If you're interested in a specific characteristic, like kindness or leadership, you can flip right to that section without feeling lost in the book. That flexibility makes the book a tool people can use however they need, and that was my main goal. It also means the length, while not overwhelming, still has enough depth to really teach something meaningful, which is around, for me, my book was around 90 pages, but I think it really depends what you're writing. If you're writing a chapter book for young adults, you might want to go for 100 to 200 pages. If you're going for a longer chapter book, maybe 300, 400. If you're going for a young adult, like children, picture books, maybe 15 pages. So it really depends. But if you're doing a book like me, where it's jumping in and out, you could really do however long you'd really like, because people are skipping around anyways, but you don't want to make it too overwhelming. So keep that in mind, but still. So another thing I realized is how important it is to get others' opinions during this process. Writing can feel long, but it doesn't have to. I share drafts with friends, family members, and mentors, and each person brought a different perspective. Sometimes they caught mistakes I made, very often actually. Other times they encouraged me when I felt stuck or dead in my work. Having people to lean on is crucial, not only because they help you improve the book, but also because they remind you that you're not alone. There's other people with you that are helping you, and it's not just you. Writing can be daunting, I will say, and letting others can be scary, especially if you don't really want to rely on others, but it makes the end result stronger, I will say. So feedback also prepares the book to connect better with readers, since it goes beyond my own viewpoint. I just highly want to stress others' opinions, because it's big. It's big. It really is. Even just for me, these 4 main chapters that I've covered were at random. I did a poll and I asked, what are some traits that you think that children should be learning early on? What are some activities that you think that helped your child learn it, or that helped your whoever it may be, learn that? What are some books that you found that could be really good? And they use that a lot of the way. And I didn't copy it. I didn't just use that for my whole chapter. That was it. I did my own research too. I used my own experiences, but it was a huge help. And it's important also to make sure that your results are diverse. If I put out my form, my first question was, what are you? Are you a teacher? Are you another type of educator? Are you a parent? Are you a troop leader? Like, are you an aunt, uncle? Like, do you have grandkids? Like, what are your relationship to some children that you're talking about specifically? And if every single person clicked parent, every person that filled out my form was a parent, and they all wanted to learn their children to learn about leadership specifically, then it wouldn't be diverse. You want to have 5 people that are parents, 5 people that are teachers, an even amount or so. And so maybe the teachers want the kids to learn about honesty, and that's a big thing for teachers. And maybe the parents just want leadership, but it's not just one group, so it's important to get a diverse, different amounts of opinions. That's what a poll is for. It's not just for one type of group. So others' opinions are important, but make sure it's diverse and you have a bunch of different opinions. So if you're able to, definitely. And Facebook is a great place to do that. That's how I did it. Once the book was finished, my job was not done. Writing and publishing are one part of the journey, but getting the word across is just as important. A book only makes an impact if people know about it and can access it. I worked on spreading the word through different channels, mainly videos, but media plays a huge role. So you can make social media platforms to share updates or about your book or whatever you may be trying to share. Post about it, create content that explains why it matters. Short videos like what I'm doing, not as short though, but shorter videos like TikTok can capture attention quickly, especially for people who might not normally be thinking about this topic. I learn a lot of things on TikTok daily. A lot of businesses are on there, a lot of authors are on there, a lot of actors. So there's a lot of things that can get your word across. And being creative and being open-minded to that is important too. Word of mouth is another powerful tool. I talked about my book in conversations. I shared it with friends and teachers and encouraged people to tell others. I also wanted to make it available in libraries because libraries are places where learning and accessibility meet. The more ways I could share the book, the more likely it would reach the people who could benefit from it. And so I would tell my mom or I'd tell my teachers, and they would tell their students or my grandparents, and their friends, and it would just keep cycling until a lot of people know about it. But I also highly recommend putting like posters up in libraries or doing in-person classes, which I will be doing, to get the word across, because those are also important. And those are also involved in word of mouth, so make sure just get the word across, because you didn't just do all of this for nothing. You want people to know about it, and that's important. To wrap it up, the process of writing and publishing my book was much longer and more layered than I first expected. It took time to write, more time to publish, and even more time to promote and share. But each stage taught me something different. Writing taught me patience and persistence. Publishing taught me attention, getting others' opinions. They all taught me something, but it just is important. All of these are very important in all the process. It's not just do one and then you got it. It's all of them work together in a cohesive I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the word, but they all work together. So looking back, I'm not gonna talk about that actually, but I'm just gonna focus a little bit more onto the publishing process. I wrote it on Apple Pages, which I highly recommend. I think I said before, but it's very good. You format it on there, they do everything for you. When I first started, I started on my phone, and it was still very good. It was reliable. And when I switched over to a MacBook, it transferred everything, and the format stayed the same. So it was very reliable and very good. When it came to actually publishing it, though, I obviously made sure everything was good, grammar was good, and then I pressed the publish button, which doesn't automatically publish it for you. It just brings you to a site called Apple Connect, I believe, and you download a 15-page, like the first 15 pages, like with the introduction cover, a cover page, and the whole book. And you upload those 3 things onto Apple Connect or Apple iConnect or something, and it takes about 72 hours, and they basically just get it approved for you. I made mine free, but I'm not exactly sure how it is to earn money off of it. But in my opinion, if you're looking to publish it for free, Apple Apple Books is the way to go. And you don't need to write down Apple Pages to get it uploaded to Apple Books. So I thought that was very well. Very, very, very good. So, and when I first started my book, when I first was thinking of ideas, I would look on these sites, and they would, because I was originally wanted to make it hardcover, and then I realized that would be a little bit more difficult, so I, simpled it down. But when I originally was thinking about getting it published in hardcover, because I thought that was the only way to publish it, it would say, oh, it's $30 per book. Okay, not bad. I'll just buy like 4 books and circle them around places, libraries, whatever. It's expensive, but it'll get the word across. Through fundraising and stuff, I can get money for it. But then I would realize it's like a minimum of 100 books you need to buy, and first of all, I don't need 100 books. Second of all, it's a lot of money. And so it might not be as approachable for newer writers. So I definitely recommend going online first, and then once you talk about it, get people to read it, you might get some monetization from that and money from people buying the book, and that can lead to having enough money to publish and get into books into the library. So I recommend that. So next, I'm going to be talking about Girl Scouts and Gold Award information. I've been in Girl Scouts since I was in first grade. I worked my way through the awards, starting with bronze and silver, and now gold. Each step really built onto one another. For my bronze award, I started smaller in my local community. I focused more on helping my school, actually. Then I moved into silver award, which also helped not help my school, sorry. I worked with my silver award, which became bigger, which was more videos, but different, very different. And each one just built more on top of each other until it led me to this. By the time I reached this one, I was ready to take on the product, and it built. So, yeah. This book became part of my Gold Award journey, writing it, publishing it, sharing it. It's about making a difference. That's what I want this book to do. It inspires others, it encourages others, and it lasts. A book is not one time, it lasts. And that's a big thing about gold, silver, and bronze awards, all 3 of them. They need to be sustainable, and that's what Girl Scouts really forces you to do and makes you do. It should be sustainable, really. It should be, because you do not want to be. I mean, maybe you do, but you don't really want to be keeping up with, if you're doing something more physical, like building houses. You don't want to be building houses until you're 50 years old, and that's your job for a volunteer. So you want to set something up. So if you did want to make houses, you could start making houses, then recruit other people, and check in on it, obviously, but get it started. So it's it's there. That's a big part of it. But the Gold Award is mainly taking everything you've learned from Girl Scouts, from all the badges I've learned and all the skills, and applying it to help your community and help a community specifically. A Gold Award is meant to be more broad. That's why I'm making videos, to get the word across everywhere, because I'm sure everyone has YouTube, so get the word across everywhere, and that usually does it can get the word across everywhere, and it's sustainable because these videos can stay up. Girl Scouts has taught me a lot. The badges I've done range from first aid to being an entrepreneur to learning how to code to learning how to cook. So many different skills. And I'm not applying all of them right now, but in some sense I applied it in my everyday. I learned how to cook in Girl Scouts, and I use that. I learned how to properly care for someone who's sick in a basic sense, and I learned some emergency protocols to do that are simple but can make a difference. I learned how to stand up for myself and advocate, and we did that a lot. And it all adds on top of each other, and it's really something that's special and would not be something I would trade for. So in order to get your gold award, you need to get a bronze and silver first, and I think some journeys, but it's not the only way to do it. And so I recommend heavily searching and doing research, because I'm not an expert. I'm just sharing what I did. But I definitely recommend going to your local council if interested. But I highly recommend. Highly recommend. Next, I have some questions that I curated from questions from me, questions from community, questions I found online. Just a mix of everything to help just wrap it up. Why is communication important with children? Communication builds trust and strengthens the relationships between adults and children. When children feel heard and understood, they're more likely to share their thoughts and feelings, which supports their emotional development and confidence. How can you encourage a child to express their feelings? You can ask open-ended questions like how did that make you feel, instead of yes or no questions. Creating a calm, safe environment where they won't feel judged helps them open up more freely. And this is a big thing when your child, I'm talking specifically right now for parenting, but if your child comes home and you ask them, did you have a good day? That's the end of the conversation. Like a lot of the time, the child will continue and say, yeah, I did this, I did this, I did this, but you're also leading them to say just yes or no. So what if they say no? What happened? Like you let it to a point where it shouldn't be like that. You should ask, what did you eat for lunch today? What friends did you hang out with? What did you do in your social studies class? Like, be specific and ask questions like that, because that's how you get the ball rolling and not just lead it to a dead end. And that happens a lot. So it's not just yes or no. So, what should you do if your child doesn't want to talk? It's important to be patient and not force them into a conversation. Let them know that you're there when they are ready to help. When they're ready, it helps build trust, and sometimes offering a quiet activity together can create a space for them to open up. Why should adults get down to a child level when speaking? I think this is a really good question. When you kneel or sit at eye level, it shows respect and makes communication less intimidating. The physical closeness also helps children feel more connected and engaged in conversations, which is a big thing in teaching, I will say. A lot of the times when I think about it, I remember looking up to my teachers. And it's not in the metaphorical sense, like I looked up to them, which I did, and they didn't look down on me, even though they physically did. But when they kneel down, it's almost like we're the same level. They're not better than me because they're taller and they have more authority. It's eye level, and we're the same amount of authority, even though it can be, it sometimes can be, they have authority, because that's important to have authority as well. So I'll share one more question. How can you praise help communication? Praising children for sharing their thoughts or trying to explain something encourages them to keep communication. It reinforces positive behaviors and shows them their words are valuable, even if they struggle to find the right ones. How can praise help communication? I'm not sure that's the right wording, but you get what I mean. So, thank you so much for listening to this presentation. I really hope you got something out of it. You learned a little bit more about me, learned a little bit more about my book. If you want to learn about a little bit more, I recommend checking out my last 5 videos. If there's something else you want to learn about, email me or read the book directly on Apple Books. I appreciate you listening and following along, and if you stayed all the way to the end, thank you, and I hope you learn more about communication and children. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you learned something today.